staff rejection.
Violence towards workers in a hospital emergency department controls. Identify control measures that can be implemented to reduce the risk of violence in a busy accident and emergency department. An approach here to this question would be to consider control measures connected with the management of the operations in the department, and then those directly related to the more physical precautions provided in the public areas of the building. The management of the operation measures here would include the provision of awareness training to staff to enable them to recognize the early signs of aggressive behavior and avoid, diffuse or otherwise deal with a violent situation. Ensuring that staffing levels were adequate. Having strict security procedures in place to deal with the storage and issue of drugs. Utilizing security staff to deter known offenders. And ensuring an effective means of communication with patients, particularly on the subject of waiting times. For the public areas, they should be well lit with attention being given to the decor and furnishings in an attempt to create a calm and open environment. To protect the staff, there would be a need for wide counters and raised floor levels. Coded locks on doors, CCTV systems, panic buttons and alarm systems. Signs would have to be displayed stressing the existence of a policy of zero tolerance for any form of violence. Violence against workers. Outline the measures an employer might consider to minimize the risk of violence against workers. There are a number of measures that may be considered. These would be dependent upon the work being undertaken and the person's vulnerability to violence and the type of violence potential. Risk assessment is an obvious starting point to properly identify hazards and the adequacy or not of existing controls. Internal policies regarding violence towards staff by colleagues, members of the public, etc. should be in place and actively enforced. This should include the encouragement of reporting such situation. At entrances, the introduction of physical security measures such as entry systems, screens, lighting, reception desk may be a consideration to control unauthorized entry. CCTV to monitor activity. The provision of an alarm system should workers suffer fear violence. Removal of likely weapons from those entering. What could be considered as weapons may be controversial and a sensitive subject, but again risk assessments should be able to identify such eventualities, and a poster clearly outlining ground rules for visitors and staff will help to explain the need for such precautions. If there is a need to remove such items from visitors, etc. prior to entry, a secure facility must be provided to hold the items until that visitor, etc. leaves the premises. Better seating and information on delays, if these are envisaged to raise tensions. Daily removal of cash or use non-cash alternatives. Queue management. Sufficient staff. Opening hours to suit the customers to customer ratios. Checking visitors' credentials. Accompanying staff when appropriate. This may involve journey planning, route planning. Avoid lone working. Improve communication. zero tolerance of aggressive behavior. Violence against workers. Large office open to the public. A large office is open to the public for inquiries, and the risk assessment has shown a significant risk of violence to workers from visitors. Outline measures that the employer could take to reduce the risk. There are a range of measures available, such as the design of the workplace and public areas to restrict access, the use of security equipment such as CCTV, alarm systems and personal alarms and panic buttons, secure areas with coded locks and physical barriers, the use of check-in and check-out procedures for visitors, the use of trained security staff, keeping the area free of anything that could be used as a potential weapon, introducing procedures for the reporting of incidents, posting signs warning of the action that would be taken in cases of violence, providing workers with training in confrontation management and stress reduction techniques. Violence, factors that may increase the risk of violence at work. Outline factors that may increase the risk of violence in the workplace. The factors that may increase the risk of violence in the workplace include working alone or after normal working hours, work involving the handling of money or other valuables, work involving the exercise of authority such as enforcement, employment involving working with people susceptible to violent outbursts or with mental health issues, as do, for example, health practitioners or those in the prison service, dealing with people under the influence of alcohol or drugs, employment involving working or traveling in the community, dealing with people suffering from stress, inappropriate design of the workplace with a lack of visual security, a failure to give employees at-risk training and information, particularly in the diffusion technique. Planning traffic routes. Outline the factors that should be taken into account when planning traffic routes for internal transport. Keep pedestrians and vehicles apart. Separate routes, designated crossing places and suitable barriers at recognized danger spots. High visibility clothing to be provided and worn if necessary. Clearly marked and signed traffic routes. Roads, gangways and aisles should have sufficient width clearance for the largest vehicle. Roads, gangways and aisles should have sufficient overhead clearance for the largest vehicle. Speed limits established and enforced. Adequate lighting to be provided. Ensure good all-round visibility. Provision of clear directional signs. Clear marking of doors and access egress points. Avoid designing in sharp and/or blind bends. Avoid overhead obstructions. The floor surface should be suitable and sufficient for the intended traffic. Floors and traffic routes to be adequately maintained. Gradients should be kept as gentle as possible, not too steep. Suitable and sufficient number of parking areas to be provided and be of the size to suit the vehicles intended to be parked therein. Avoid reversing if possible. Make people aware of the movement of vehicles. Movement of vehicles, vehicle and pedestrian interface. Outline the precautions that might be needed to ensure the safety of pedestrians in areas where vehicles are in use. A segregated system for vehicles and pedestrian traffic. Appropriate roadway and aisle markings. Maintaining a good level of visibility, for example mirrors, transparent doors, provision of adequate lighting, audible warning on vehicles. Establishing and enforcing site rules. The provision of refuges. The wearing of high-visibility clothing. Good standards of housekeeping. Training and supervision of all those concerned involved. Accidents on stairs. A. Give 4 reasons why accidents may occur on stairs. B. Outline ways in which accidents on stairs may be prevented. Part A. 1. Inadequate design, dimensions, treads, handrails. 2. Poor housekeeping, obstructions, spillages, trailing cables. 3. Poor lighting, shadows or glare. 4. Slippery surfaces, oil, water, ice. 5. Unsuitable footwear. 6. Damaged flooring or covering. 7. Manual handling loads on stairs. 8. Hurrying up down the stairs. Part B. Adequate width of walkways to be ensured. Stairs to be fitted with handrails. Lighting levels are to be adequate for the environment and traffic. Emergency lighting provision to be ensured. Surfaces should be non-slip. Outside walkways, stairs to be covered. Procedures in place and enforced for the timely removal of spillages. Maintenance of defects to be undertaken in a timely manner. Introduce and enforce a defect reporting procedure. If loads have to be taken to a higher level, use a lift. If not available, introduce and enforce a safe working procedure. Instigate appropriate site rules for the use of stairs. Reversing vehicles. Outline the means by which the risk of accidents from reversing vehicles within a workplace can be reduced. Introduction and enforcement on one-way systems. Drive-through systems. Designated turning circles, marked and enforced. Separation of vehicles and pedestrians. Suitable workplace design, size and markings. Audible reversing alarms. Mirrors on at blind corners. Adequate levels of lighting, to remove shadow or reduce dazzle glare. Use of trained banksmen. Wearing of high-visibility clothing. Site rules introduced and enforced. Training of all concerned.